Mention Piste performance and you imagine a strong, dynamic skier scorching down the mountain, leaving two perfect lines in the snow. You think about carving. But you know, the Piste is a wide, narrow, often steep and sometimes bumpy place. And to perform, you need a few other tools in your box than just the ability to carve, because the fact is, you can't carve everywhere. To control your speed and line, you'll sometimes need to slide your turns and also vary their speed to suit the terrain, skills we'll be looking at later. However, carving is a load of fun, so that is where we'll concentrate the bulk of our efforts. In the beginning, you learn to ski parallel by rotating the legs together and then skidding the skis around. Skidding is a vital skill, but when you look to ramp up the speed, well, fast skidding skis are pretty unpredictable and it becomes increasingly difficult to control the situation. But in a carving turn, the skis stay on their edges the whole way round and knife through the snow, hence it's potentially the safest way to ski at speed. And the challenge? Well, to put the skis on their edges and then hold them there as the pressure builds up is something of a balancing act that demands you take up some positions which may be outside your normal comfort zone. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. The theory of carving is very simple. The skis are fat in the tip, thin in the middle, and then fat again at the other end. So if you put them on their edges, they'll just follow that curve and turn. Yes, by just rolling onto your edges and skiing across a gentle slope, you'll feel the skis follow the contour of their edges and get a sensation of basic carving. But you're not just following train tracks. When you stand on the ski and apply pressure to the middle, it bends. The more pressure you apply by either skiing faster and or edging harder, the more it bends, and so the tighter the radius of the turn. You can learn a lot more about equipment in the extra section of this DVD, but early on in your carving career, a ski with a soft flex is an advantage as it'll bend under less pressure and so allow you to carve and slide your turns at slower speeds. Speed is a tricky one. You need a certain amount of speed in order to carve. The problem is that because the edges aren't skidding across the snow and causing friction, the act of carving itself doesn't slow you down. That's why racers do it. So if you're on too steep a pitch, you can find yourself accelerating, at which point you get defensive, heave on the handbrake, and instinctively do all the wrong things. So that's often the problem early on, too much ambition too soon. You see, carving is really a green and blue piece type of thing. But if you're worried about picking up too much speed, you're just going to skid and naturally wash off all your speed. So this is perfect. Find a slope like this that gives you the confidence to let the skis run. And preferably one that's just had the roller on it. Now, it is possible to carve on steeper slopes and control the speed, and that's going to form the meat of our masterclass section. But for the moment, let's keep it shallow and simple. So Sean, here we are, top of the perfect pitch for carving at an easy level. What is the first thing you think about, given you can only really think about one thing at a time?
I think, yeah, that's right. I think the first thing to think about is just keeping a clean edge. You know, so not sliding the edge, just keeping a nice clean track, or tracks, preferably two, in the snow. So we should give that a go, eh?
Let's see.
I'm just focusing on nice, easy turns and trying to keep two clean tracks in the snow, both skis edging.
Strangely, this means actually doing less than you normally do. Don't be tempted to try and rotate the skis. Just focus on holding the edge, keeping it clean, and letting the skis do the work.
And moving on from that, you really need to balance, because there's more pressure pushing on your body. You need to balance against the force and which direction it's coming from. So as you're going through a turn, a bit like a bicycle when you're cycling around a corner. You need to put your body inside of the turn that you're doing to hold the pressure that's pushing on you. Because you're holding an edge when you're carving, it puts a lot more force on you as you're going through the turn. You have to resist against the direction of where that force is coming from. And then you probably need to stack all your joints and muscles together to hold that resistance practically, because you know, sometimes when you're going fast enough, you're pulling 3G, so 3 times your body weight pushing on you. If you've got any sort of bends or twists in your body that are really unnecessary, they're going to hurt. With a well-stacked position, you really do feel like you can do anything on your skis.
It's a little more complicated than just leaning in. Stacking means taking up a position where you're biomechanically efficient, muscles and joints in a line, so you're strong on your skis, a hard object to knock over.
It's all about efficiency, and with efficiency comes you know, a lot more freedom and ease. People say it looks easy when somebody's skiing well, and it's so true. It just, you know, it feels easy because you're doing less. You're just doing the right things.
I'm not sure there's a simple answer to this question, but I see some people carving by just throwing themselves in, but actually the skis stay flat, so they just topple. So how do you explain to someone the first time what actually initiates the carve? What top coaches don't like are direct questions about how to do something, because if they offer up a definitive answer, they fear they'll get people skiing by numbers and taking up fixed robotic shapes. Whereas really carving, and in fact all skiing, is about feel and about adapting your technique and skills to respond to the terrain and the shape and speed of each turn. However, sometimes it is good to have a model, so I did persuade Sean and Amanda to offer a kind of carving template, and with help from the stunning images from our high-speed camera, help explain the start, middle and end. So there are the bare mechanics. And here are a few tips that might add some flesh to the bones and help deepen your understanding.
Start with the body making the move. The body making the move actually just pulls the skis with it. And it's very important to keep your body in alignment. If you start to get your body out of alignment, that's when you don't have so much power to be able to put on the skis at the beginning of the next turn.
The turn has to start with the body, so you're in a position to resist the force before you feel it. The key is that the body and skis all tilt over as one unit. Very different from this example, where the body tilts over tentatively, but actually the skis remain relatively flat on the snow before edging suddenly and skidding. You know, skiing behind you, I noticed you've got quite a lot narrower stance than Amanda.
Yeah. I think it's just important what feels comfortable. But Amanda comes from a sort of racing background.
So do you.
More recently than me. So she's still got that very stable stance that's good at high speed.
It's a question of style. Amanda always skis fast, so favours that wide stance for stability. I guess I err on the side of agility. Doing short turns, for example, a narrower stance allows me to move more quickly from edge to edge. But in reality, I'm always changing my stance according to the conditions and the shape of my turns.
Now, one thing that we haven't really talked about is poles when it comes to carving. I've skied without poles because I had to, because I was carrying that damn camera there, and it was harder for some reason. So what are you doing with the poles at high speed?
I think that a lot of it is subconscious, if you like. High speed, quite often, when you're leaning inside the turn, we were just looking at the footage yesterday that we took, and we slow-moed it, and you could see the ski pole in the snow was just always dragging on the inside, just very lightly, and it gives you a kind of third point of contact, your 2 feet and your pole, and it subconsciously tells you where the snow is, how far you've got till you get there. So it's useful for that, but also the pole plant at high speed. It doesn't necessarily get planted in front of you unless you're on a really steep slope. It's just a kind of pole touch at the side quite often as you change turns, so it can act in that sort of timing fashion as well.
Okay.
You know, what's really important is you've got enough speed to, and the force is generated through the skis to actually make this all work. Okay. So you can't do it too slowly. It's actually very difficult to carve very slowly. So increase the speed a little bit and use any of those cues.
Look at this young chap go. A picture of power and graceful coordination. But the truth is that given a pair of well-tuned modern skis and a shallow piste, it really is pretty easy to carve out some sweet round turns and, in the eyes of the unknowing, look pretty tasty. And quite recently, I was made all too aware of my own massive deficiencies. It's confession time. I did a race last weekend, and in my own mind, I was Franz Klammer in his prime, but I was 22nd behind the winner.
That's a lot of time in a sport that's divided by hundreds, isn't it?
Now, I wasn't wearing a catsuit, to be fair.
There's a few seconds.
Yeah. But obviously I'm sliding around, and I want you to help me find some seconds.
Yeah. I don't think we'll find 20, but I think we can probably put you up the rankings a bit, just with a few little tweaks here and there. If you're cruising down on your edges on an easy slope, but then losing that edge when it gets a little steeper and harder, which is probably what you're going to find on a racetrack, you don't usually have to look too far. You're probably out of balance and not using both edges efficiently. First thing about Pete is that he's not really using his inside ski. Freeze it here and you see his knees are together, which means his inside ski is almost flat. I've got an exercise here which is sure to end in tears. If you only put one ski on, then you've no choice but to use both edges. And the real test is now when it's effectively your inside ski and you have to stand on it. I think what we're trying to do there, Pete, is trying to give you a little more confidence on your inside leg. I think when you see the video, you'll see that your inside leg's a little weak. It's not doing as much work as the outside, and we really want a good balance of pressure on both skis. So this is going to commit you to that inside ski.
So you want one of these, do you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. It's very bizarre. Here we go.
We've upped the level. See how the loss of balance and confidence makes him try and rotate the skis rather than carve. As he goes down, he becomes more comfortable and confident, and he edges more.
Very easy one way, and this is my inside ski. Don't really use that so much. So that's a really good exercise, actually. God, it's very tiring, absolutely knackering.
You found that quite tricky, didn't you, Pete?
I did, and I think it's also a cultural thing, because it was only, as little as 10 years ago that you were told specifically not to stand on the inner ski.
Yeah.
And, but I can see the advantage.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big move in the ski industry too. You know, the skis are designed now, we put equal weight on both. You know, we can hold a lot more grip. Balance of pressure over two skis is better than one. So, you know, what you were doing down there was good, and it definitely looked like it was getting easier towards the end, so I think it's just more practice.
Yes, as little as 10 years ago, the idea was to carve 90% on the outside ski and keep the inside ski flat on the snow, so that if the outside ski did slip out, you could hold yourself up. But now that skis are so much more powerful and actually designed to carve, By weighting both edges equally, you only need to put half as much pressure on each one, which gives you lightness and mobility. What's worth stressing again is that you can't gain the stability and freedom to use both edges unless you have a wide stance. Bolting the skis together helps you rotate the skis to perform tight pivoting turns, in the bumps for example, but you can tell from the way this guy's skidding around that with the skis together he gets blocked and just can't edge them.
So what I should feel now, as I ramp it up a bit, starting to use the inner ski, just more grip.
Yeah, more grip and more power. You'll be able to hold more pressure, so that's the task. So I think what we should do now is really let's start to test it.
Okay.
So if we ski down quite fast and we just do one tight turn right across the piste, it's going to put a lot of pressure on you, and you can really test if you're going in the right position or not.
Shoulder to the floor.
Shoulder to the floor. Okay?
Okay.
What I have to do here is lean in far enough to resist all the pressure that's built up over a very tight turn.
Oh, that looked great. The aim now is I'm going to go in Sean's tracks and see if I've got half a chance of staying in it. Total commitment. Here we go. Shoulder. Down, I'm down.
From Sean's steely expression, I'm not sure that's exactly what he meant.
Really were trying to put your shoulder to the floor there, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not kind of what I meant. I just, I thought you meant, go all out, go on, and you've got to commit to it, so that's important. But if you put your shoulder in to the turn, you're going to start to lean, the opposite direction. Really what we want to do is get your centre of mass in, with everything else.
So lead with the hips rather than the shoulder. Yeah, okay. I did slide then, didn't I?
Yeah, it was a little slithery, but, you weakened your position by putting your shoulder too far.
Yeah, okay.
The problem is that it's easy to drop the shoulder down without actually leaning in and edging the skis. But what we see with both Sean and Amanda is a perfect symmetry. Centre of mass to the inside, skis and body at right angles to each other, so that although they're canted over, they're still centred and strong. Yup, it's the old word again, balance.
Pete's wasted seconds basically come from him scraping off speed. He's losing his edges because he's delivering sudden shock loads to them, which in turn is because he's rushing the turns and not adjusting to the terrain. Let's have a look and a listen to Amanda.
Okay, so here I've got quite a lot of speed coming up, but I need to make sure that I keep my movements gradual and slow. This will keep the control of my edges and the strength through the turn.
So it's not just about resisting the pressure, it's also about being subtle with it as the terrain changes.
Yeah, I think when we go over little bumps and rollers or the snow conditions change, we really have to have that ability to flex while we're in balance through a car. So the drill we're going to do now is a boot touch. So we're just touching our boots through the turns.
Sounds easy, but I'm sure it's not.
What we're trying to do here is get the weight through the middle of the sole of our foot as we're going through the turns.
To get the whole length of the edge to bite, you obviously have to be balanced over the middle of the ski. Relatively easy on a shallow groomed piste, but harder of course when it gets lumpy. Touching the boot not only makes you flex, but also makes you aware of what happens to your weight when you flex. The most popular mistake is ending up in the back seat, partly through not anticipating the speed and so having the rug pulled from under your feet, and partly from failing to compensate with the upper body when you flex. Knees bending and torso leaning back is not a great combo. The difference couldn't be more obvious. Freeze Sean at the end of the turn, where he's most flexed to absorb the maximum pressure, and you'll see his torso tilted forwards, so his body mass is still perfectly centred over the skis. to handle more speed, carve tighter turns, and in my case, dominate the racing scene, this notion of making yourself the centre of the circle, stacking as we call it, becomes a key focus. So let's delve deeper.
Good powerful skiing's about having all your bones and muscles working together in alignment. That gives you the maximum strength you can have through the turns.
But it's not just a case of hurling yourself to the inside. Your body angle has to match the pressure, which is different at all stages of the turn.
I've got a little map here of the turn and just how far your body can be inside the turn. The force we're resisting from the inside of the turn coming out is centripetal force, and we have to hold against the pressure that's pushing us outside of the turn there. So at the top of the turn there's not a lot of pressure. As you come around the turn, the pressure builds up more and more. So at the top here we're not leaning too far inside the turn, and gradually as we come around the corner we're leaning more and more inside to resist that pressure that the force from the inside of the corner is putting on us, until we get to the bottom here where we've got the most pressure. And after you resist the pressure here, you've got to let go and go into the new turn, so you would start to come up and into the new turn and start the process again. So to resist the pressure, it's gradual at the beginning and then more as the pressure builds up. Gradual, more as the pressure builds up. Gradual here, more as the pressure builds up. And you can change the rhythm, make them a little tighter. Same process, comes in a little bit quicker on the tighter turns.
These angles sadly don't take themselves up. You have to be proactive, move the hips to the inside before the pressure comes on.
Okay, so here I've got quite a lot of speed.
It's a big leap of faith. Your body moves down the hill first, effectively cutting the corner. The skis then catch up. It's all about getting brave with your angles, and above all, having some fun with it.
And we're talking a little bit about lateral angles and trying to increase the distance you're traveling laterally in each turn. You can actually touch your hand down parts of the turn to get extreme angles.
Giving yourself a separate goal is always a good way to take your mind off the job in hand. Like the shoulder thing, the deal has to be to touch the snow without breaking and losing form. I.e., not like that. But you know, I can tell you what's going on here. I'm sliding because I'm not stacking enough, because I'm not taking up steep enough angles, because, and this is the key word in all sports, I'm lacking confidence. I'm really not afraid of wiping out. After all, if the skis break out at this angle, you don't have very far to fall. I think on the steeper slope, the worry is that if I do stay on my edges, I'll just pick up speed. Something which Amanda may be able to help me with.
Whoa. What tends to happen is that, blues are fine because you're not worried about the old speed build-up. And then you saw on that one, just starts okay, and then I know it's a confidence thing where you just think, oh, my edge is going to hold, therefore you start slipping or what, but it just always the back of the turn goes.
Yeah, it could also be to do with actually finishing your turn off. When you're going down a steeper slope, if you keep your skis facing downhill for a long period of time, you're actually going to build up a lot of speed. So in order to control that speed, you can keep the turn going around until you're facing further across the hill, and that's going to help you keep your speed under control.
So I'm going to try and follow Amanda now, and what's the one thing I need to concentrate on?
The one thing you really need to focus on down here is making sure that you finish your turns off by bringing your skis across the hill after every turn.
So if I stay on your tracks, that should happen?
Yes, absolutely. Let's give it a go.
The pressure, as we've seen, builds up at the end of the turn. And it's all too tempting, rather than hang on to the turn, to release the skis too early, and that's what I'm doing here, and that's why I'm skidding and dropping below Amanda's line. If ever there was an occasion to promote tuition, this is it. The instructor shows you the line and the angles you need to take up. You watch and mirror. But so much more than that, she shows you that it's possible, and her very proximity gives you the confidence to give it a go. It's the nature of all sport, but especially skiing, that after a meteoric rise as a beginner, the improvement graph suddenly becomes depressingly flat. But as you've seen with carving, technically there's not that much to it. So what allows you to take it to the next level is somehow finding the confidence to attack it. It's about creating a special moment where you get a few things to come together. Maybe the sun is shining. The snow is groomed and grippy. You've tightened your boots so they feel snug and positive. You've tuned your skis and you trust your edges. You're feeling strong and alert. You're in superior company and so are forced to raise your game. And maybe there's an accessory or two that will provide the vital trigger.
I have to admit, Sean, I haven't been a great fan of helmets for many sports over the years, only because I just feel I'm in this closed and darkened room when my senses are blocked, and I actually end up falling over more. But what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think the old helmets that you used to get, the earpieces used to be covered here with plastic, and you couldn't hear much. And I think with the new ones, you got floppy ears there, so you can usually hear. You can hear a little better, and that's better for your balance too.
Yeah. One thing I do notice, though, these are much better, but it's become a trigger for me now. It's like putting your dancing shoes on before you go out. It means you're going dancing. Put the helmet on, you're going fast.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's actually going to protect me. I'm sure it is in a fall, but it actually makes me think about doing something adventurous.
Yeah, dancing shoes is a good one. I was thinking sort of body armour when you're going into battle. Because, I think when you put your helmet on, you have a little bit extra confidence that you maybe didn't have before.
I notice it's no longer a geeky thing, is it? People look cool.
Absolutely not.
I look awesome, don't I?
Apart from you.
If carving does bring with it one danger, it's that you risk turning into a bit of a one-trick pony. I mean, so glorious is the sensation of holding an edge and of travelling so fast and you're in control that you spend your entire holiday seeking out shallow groomed runs. In the last section we did look at how to beef up the technique so that you can take your carving onto steeper slopes, but there is a limit.
Okay, is it just me, or are there some slopes that are just too steep to carve on?
Oh, absolutely. I think once we go to certain steepnesses, everybody's going to have trouble on that. And I think what's important there, you're doing a pretty good job, but what's important there when you do get on too steep a slope is that you edge a little less and you rotate the skis a little more. So there's two fundamental ways you can turn a ski. One is to rotate them, and the other one is to edge them.
Rotating is what we did way back at the end of the central theme, turning the skis by rotating the legs simultaneously so the skis fan across the snow and slide around. And edging is about tilting the skis and letting them follow the contour of the edges so they turn themselves.
So when we're skiing steep slopes, we want to use a lot more rotation and a lot less edge.
Here Amanda is doing quite an advanced drill for blending pressure, edge and rotation. This builds the skills required to develop your short turns, which are going to be key to performing in steeps and bumps, which just happens to form the content of another DVD we've produced.
I should point out that there's a big difference between losing an edge when carving and going into an accidental four-wheel skid. and this deliberate smearing where Sean is controlling the shape and speed of the turn by blending edge pressure and rotation. A ski has a predetermined turning radius depending on the depth of its side cut, i.e. how narrow it is under the boot. A specialist slalom ski would typically have a 12-metre radius, whereas a more all-round ski would describe a longer turn, maybe 15 metres. However, one of the talents of good skiers is being able to manipulate the ski's shape and make them turn tighter than they're supposed to. They do that by edging the skis more steeply at slower speeds and then adjusting their own body shape to stay in balance. But to carve tighter at slower speeds, you need to angulate. You what? Well, when you angulate, you bend sideways at the waist to form a C shape. And the more you angulate, the more you can edge the skis, but still stay on top of them and in balance. It's not such a strong position, but you're travelling slower and so dealing with weaker forces. Here's a funny thing. There is a lot going on when you carve, and yet the whole thing is very simple, and actually a lot simpler than basic parallel turns. What I find is that improving at higher levels often comes from ignoring the techie stuff and focusing on quite simple principles. Just let it happen. The temptation is to rotate the legs and turn the skis inside where they're pointing, which will get them sliding. Don't turn the skis, let them turn you. I'm really not sure about this. Here's someone relaxing. Not very dynamic, is it? But listen to Sean skiing. He sounds as if he's wrestling a warthog. Yes, at slow speeds, it is all very calm. But once you put your foot on the gas, then you really have to work if you're to hold your shape, resist the forces, and hold an edge. You need to be relaxed, as in not in a state of blind panic, but in an aggressive sort of way. Yes, to ski well, you have to be relaxed, alert, and responsive. On the same theme, really, to remain stable at speed, your muscles, and especially your core muscles, have to be taut. But at the same time, you have to have flexibility in the joints to adapt to the terrain. It's the simplest but most effective tip in all balanced sports. Turn the head and look where you want to go, and the body naturally projects in the right direction. And just to finish, let's leave you with a glorious image of a pro at the top of her game and remind you of our carving template.